Back when I first reviewed every single DCEU movie, I didn't expect Zack Snyder's Justice League to end up being great. Did I expect it to be better than Justice League 2017? Absolutely. In fact, I didn't have any doubt about that whatsoever. However, I didn't like Man of Steel, but I liked Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition for what it was, so it's not like I had this overly fond connection with Zack Snyder's DC films. Personally, I just wanted to see Zack Snyder's vision finally fulfilled, whether it was good or bad, since Justice League 2017 was clearly butchered by Joss Whedon and other executives. The weird thing about all of this is that I didn't expect to finish Zack Snyder's Justice League and feel this overwhelming sense of bittersweetness. As soon as I finished the Snyder Cut, it instantly hit me that we're likely never going to see anything that continues this vision. There aren't any future Zack Snyder DC films, there isn't a Zack Snyder's Justice League 2, and there isn't an animated series to continue this storyline either. Originally, I gave this movie a hard time when we first heard that it was a 4-hour movie, but now that I've finished it, I don't think this movie could have gone any other way. Mind you, this video isn't meant to be a regular Snyder Cut review, but it's meant to answer the question that's related to a consistently trending topic on Twitter. Should DC restore the Snyderverse? The beauty of Zack Snyder's Justice League is that it's finally put DC back into a positive light. Wonder Woman 1984 was supposed to do that job, but as we all know, that movie crashed and burned. I don't want to give the impression that Zack Snyder has suddenly saved the DCU, or that even if this movie was put out as the original Justice League movie, it would have been just as loved. The Snyder Cut does have issues. Trust me, as I watched the entire thing, I wrote both positive and negative things for each chapter. However, those issues aren't enough for me to shred into the movie. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely adored this movie, but here's the thing. Release the Snyder Cut has been a movement that has gone on for years. This moment has been built up for so long that it almost feels like DC's Endgame moment, a gigantic build-up that leads to a movie with an ending that's both satisfying and bittersweet. Before anyone gets upset, I'm not comparing the Snyder Cut to Endgame. I'm specifically pointing out that feeling we all had when Endgame was over. Ironically, the one thing that Warner Brothers and DC tried to prevent from happening ended up being one of the most positive things to happen outside of Joker. Truthfully, bringing back the Snyderverse can actually be an interesting idea. The long-term plan of let's give these superheroes a ton of standalone films with very little continuity and barely any universe world building is a good idea on paper. Think about it, right now, people have no real investment into these DC characters besides their personal favorite ones, because the general consensus on social media is, LOL, DC movies suck, who cares, we have Marvel movies. That's why, on paper, it makes sense why DC is focusing on these standalone films, plus an alternate timeline with Matt Reeves' The Batman as their big push. However, they're actually missing out on a potentially golden opportunity. This brings me to Zack Snyder's Justice League. After watching this movie, I can entirely and wholeheartedly say that it was an absolute bittersweet movie for me. As a DC fan, I finally got what I wanted with characters I actually care about after years of wishing for it. For the first time ever, it felt like DC had a somewhat flawed, yet enjoyable, cohesive universe after years of lacking one. Wonder Woman, Flash, Batman, Aquaman, and thankfully Cyborg actually felt like a real team by the end of this movie. As we speak, there's an entire universe that has building blocks already completed, and they can continue to build upon this. It's almost frustrating knowing that the Snyderverse has already established all of the core DCU superheroes, regardless of whether the Origins movies worked or not, and DC is simply going to ignore the momentum that the Snyder Cut has brought to them. Paris Lilly, who I personally discovered through Kinda Funny, tweeted the following out. Warner Brothers needs more original content to get HBO Max subs. Snyder Cut is universally praised. The win-win scenario? Create a 2-season, 12-part Justice League animated series, hand the keys to Bruce Timm with Snyder as producer, finish the story. Hashtag restore the Snyderverse. You know what? I agree. This is how DC should go about restoring the Snyderverse. I entirely understand the possible and likely hesitation that DC has with restoring the Snyderverse. Every movie after Man of Steel and Batman v Superman basically did much better than expected. And no, we don't talk about Suicide Squad since it clearly got butchered in the same fashion as Justice League. Although, while we're mentioning Suicide Squad, released the Ayer cut. Regardless, from Wonder Woman to Wonder Woman 1984, the entire tone of the DCU has shifted into a much lighter tone compared to Man of Steel or Batman v Superman, and in a way, to DC, it likely feels like they'd be going back on all of the work they've done. The problem with that mindset is that DC hasn't necessarily earned the right to think that they can ignore how universally praised the Snyder Cut is. From the emphasis on Cyborg's story to making the Justice League members feel like equal members, to fixing narrative problems such as Superman disappearing to a farm and suddenly appearing at the end of the original Justice League film without any context, and more importantly, to fixing Steppenwolf as a villain, the Snyder Cut did more than any of us expected. Then you add the Snyder Cut introducing Darkseid, who legitimately felt terrifying and like an actual threat to the fate of Earth. There's way too much potential for Zack Snyder's iteration of the DC universe. A Snyderverse can exist in the same vein as Marvel's What If. DC's already creating multiple timelines across the board. Matt Reeves' The Batman's universe, Joker's universe, the main DCEU universe, the CW's universe, and the HBO Max DC shows universe. We already know that most of these universes take place on different timelines thanks to the CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths event. So what's the problem with finishing up in an already established universe that has clearly reached a high note and has a high demand? I want to emphasize, there are things I disliked within the Snyder Cut, so it's not like I think the movie was perfect by any means. In fact, just to name a few complaints, Barry Allen's introduction was ruined by him moving Iris's hair in the Speed Force like a creep. I absolutely hated every single time there was yelling or lamentation thanks to Zack Snyder's music choices. There were potentially beautiful shots brought down by the lack of color saturation, and way too many shots that use slow motion when they shouldn't have. Lastly, I still personally dislike Jared Leto's take on the Joker character. I understand that last one is going to vary on a person-to-person basis, but it just doesn't cut it for me, and a large part of that is due to the fact that we've yet to see any real Batman v Joker chemistry. These are legitimate things that DC can explore now that the Snyder Cut completed the very first Justice League team up for the DCEU, even if it's not canon to the mainline universe. For years, DC has tried to chase the MCU and match that type of universe. The closest thing we currently have to that is the Snyderverse. We finally have real world building, real deep dives into these characters, an actual team up movie, and sure, it took 4 full hours to do so, but without it, we wouldn't be this close to the MCU. Just to compare, Marvel spent 10 years building the MCU, and we're just now seeing what characters such as the Falcon and the Winter Soldier are doing on a regular basis. With a series such as Zack Snyder's Justice League, the animated series, DC can have something just like that, even if it builds towards deeper questions and answers regarding the universe. Some of the best parts of the Snyder Cut was seeing the Justice League literally hanging out and building team chemistry among one another. That's one of the biggest voids within the DCEU, a lack of team chemistry amongst the main cast, and that's partially due to DC's new long-term game plan. Even if it was a series where not every single episode had every single character in it, I still love to see more of Aquaman and the Flash, Cyborg and Wonder Woman, or even seeing the chemistry of Batman and Superman growing throughout that type of series, since that was a pivotal point in the Snyder Cut. With the amount of upcoming solo movies that the DCEU has, having an alternate universe where the Justice League is already a team and there's several unanswered questions left that could lead to interesting outcomes would be worth it. Justice League ending with Bruce, Diana, and Alfred talking about a round table with room for more seats or members would be such an interesting point to continue moving forward, leading to Zack Snyder's vision for Batman's Nightmare. Thanks to an interview with Yahoo Sports, we have this quote from Zack Snyder. Darkseid would have come to Earth and Lex would have figured out the anti-life equation and given it to him upon his arrival, Snyder said. He also gives Darkseid the knowledge that if he kills Lois, Superman will succumb to anti-life, the Earth falls, and Flash has to go back in time to stop Lois from being killed. That's really the linchpin of the whole thing. This right here is a storyline that I would absolutely love to see fulfilled, even if it takes more than 2 seasons. Put all of this directly into my veins. Give the Flash more experience as a superhero. Build up the Batman versus Joker chemistry. Build up Superman to the point where this happens and he succumbs to anti-life. You can even do more with this, such as actually showing us the flashbacks of what led to Robin's death against Joker, exploring Cyborg, growing him as a character, and even showing us side stories that take place within Atlantis. There's actual potential if you truly plan out the entire timeline for a limited Snyderverse series, and DC shouldn't ignore this. Restoring the Snyderverse doesn't have to mean more darker themed movies made for the theaters again. It can be a limited animated series that happens to be voice acted by the same actors. It's not like DC's animation is weak. In fact, most people love the animated DC content more so than the live action content. It can also be a big budget live action series still starring the same actors too. It's literally right there. The potential to finally create a universe filled with DC characters, events, and Easter eggs that fans will adore in the same vein as the MCU. And that's everything DC has ever tried to build since the get-go. Fast-tracking it led to them failing, butchering Justice League and Suicide Squad, and now we're here. We're finally here with a cohesive universe that ends on a legitimately interesting point. Zack Snyder's Justice League has showcased that when he has complete creative control and has the actual passion behind his projects, there can be a positive outcome. Before I end the video, there's a few things I want to emphasize. Firstly, I stand with Ray Fisher. Secondly, release the Ayer cut. Thirdly, if you make it a limited series on HBO Max, restore the Snyderverse. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you really enjoyed this video, hit that sub button. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, write a comment down below. Don't forget to keep it real with peace, love, and positivity.